The Art of War was written by an ancient Chinese general named Sun Tzu over 2,000 years ago. The book, which is basically just a series of lists, continues to be sold, read, and discussed today. The Art of War is both a mashup of rules of engagement for the time and simultaneously a profound philosophical dedication to the subject of strategy as a whole. This wisdom has been passed down for literally thousands of years, and much of these positions are true for more than humanity's violent proclivities. As the world has learned throughout history, this insight applies to politics, business, sports, or even video games. There are a few core tenets I've taken from The Art of War that have garnered increased success in my gameplay. Reading some of this ancient book has had a direct, positive impact on my skill as a gamer, and led to understanding the concepts in a broader way. I wanted to pass along these fundamental truths to combat for two reasons. On one hand, this is essentially a glorified universal tips and tricks project, and I find that at least mildly amusing. On the other hand, as I mentioned, this wisdom is applicable to more than violent video games. I would like to once again emphasize that you can utilize these ideas in your everyday life. They're useful for sports, creative pursuits, and more. That said, the way I'll teach these ideas is obviously through the perspective of video games. In the realm of gaming, these various concepts have a bearing on more than modern military shooters like Call of Duty, which has used an actual Sun Tzu quote in their marketing, by the way.
All warfare is based on deception.
In addition to real-life applications, these pillars of focus are more than likely true for most games with any combat at all. Your skill level is also irrelevant. Take this to heart, and you'll improve whether you're struggling to survive in a Zelda game, or if you consider From Software games like Dark Souls a meditative experience.
Let's go! Let's go, motherfucker!
Therefore, the clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. I enjoyed reading Extreme Ownership, a book about leadership that accounts various experiences of the authors, former Navy SEALs Leif Babin and Jocko Willink. There is an entire chapter dedicated to the concept of cover and move, a common tactic in any military combat situation, and how that idea can be applied universally. I found a passage that sums up the idea quite well. One team covered, their weapons trained on threats, while the other team moved. Then those teams reversed roles. In this way, the teams leapfrogged in bounds, constantly utilizing cover and move to ensure we were prepared to fend off an attack as we maneuvered through the streets, says Babin. According to Jocko Willink, cover and move is, quote, the fundamental tactic, perhaps the only tactic. It is in fact the first in Jocko's 4 laws of combat. Cover and move is simply a modern progression of a basic military principle from throughout history. In Miyamoto Musashi's A Book of 5 Rings, the tactic of cover and move runs parallel to his concept he called to hold down the pillow. With modern firearms, cover and move becomes the only tactic because the idea is to literally prevent someone from doing anything on the battlefield. You'll see some of the top competitive streamers in the world utilize this idea when they're in a match. It is literally used in games at the highest possible level. Obviously, in an online shooter, the same exact logic applies, but what about other gameplay scenarios or other styles of combat aside from shooters? I've been playing chess since I was a kid, and this is a concept I inherently understood. Move a pawn forward, but have something else to back it up if it was attacked. Then that piece can take whatever attacked your pawn. I love setting my pawns up in a zigzag formation, so anytime a pawn in the front row is attacked, I have another one waiting from behind to take the enemy's attacking piece. It's always effective, and it prevents about half of the enemy's pieces from being able to cross that threshold by default. In The Witcher 3, Geralt has magic known as signs that he can use for various means. I use Axii in every one-on-one fight. The spell puts most enemies in a daze, leaving you ample opportunity to slice them in half. This allows you to do a maximum amount of damage without being touched, and the enemy can't do anything about it unless they have some sort of resistance to the sign. Persona has a weakness mechanic. Basically, hitting an enemy with an attack they're weak to will allow you to put them in a down state, and if you do that with every enemy in the same turn, you unlock a move called an all-out attack, a massive attack from your team all at once. This allows you to take the concept of cover and move into a turn-based JRPG, allowing you to end the fight before it starts. You are imposing your will on the enemy without allowing the enemy's will to be imposed on you. As Jocko Willink pointed out, cover and move, or some equivalent to the idea, is the, quote, fundamental tactic. If you cannot be beaten, you will not lose. To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. There are times where you must fight, and victory is not always a certainty. However, waiting for an enemy to attack, and then hitting them when they're vulnerable, is always effective. Keep moving, watch their pattern, and simply don't attack unless you have a significant advantage in the situation. Without a teammate in a shooter, your best option in a one-on-one engagement is to secure some height advantage and/or stick to cover. Then only attack when your enemy forfeits their position. This is true for most situations in the genre. The element of surprise and added defense stack the odds in your favor almost every time, assuming parallel health and other variables. From Software's games push players towards an understanding of Musashi's philosophy. This is specifically in regards to his views on a warrior's mentality. The way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. Preemptively accepting the potential for failure makes an encounter more manageable. Acceptance diminishes fear. From that calming demeanor, you're able to process the information in front of you more efficiently and react to it more effectively. This comes down to patience and self-control, which, in turn, becomes skill. On the subject of opportunity, I can't help but be reminded of XCOM 2's Overwatch mechanic. The move in question is a reactive ability that allows you to shoot enemies out in the open when it isn't your turn. The XCOM 2 wiki page explains this mechanic pretty well, actually. While Overwatch is active, any hostile unit that moves into the unit's shooting range will be attacked with a reaction shot that has a chance to hit the target. Overwatch requires a single action, but ends the unit's turn once used. In tactics games, you have a set amount of actions per turn. This means that maximizing the actions you use will probably maximize your success. This particular mechanic is so fundamental and important that it asks you to give up the rest of your turn. Proper positioning and a surprise attack are so valuable that the game asks you to forfeit any other tactic. The enemy then needs to help you in order to help themselves. This will always leave you at a tactical advantage. Let them run out and get shot first. Your odds of success will be astronomically higher. Shifting gears to chess again, I prefer to play black over white. The only reason this matters is because white always goes first. You then might think that white would have the advantage, and you'd technically be correct, especially at the Grandmaster levels. It's not much, but they get the slightest edge as a result of dictating the flow of the game. But going first in chess only matters, in most cases, if I don't see what you're doing. If I see your plan, I will plan accordingly. The best strategy that I've found is to continue reacting and forward planning. Once my opponent attacks in some capacity, ideally I'm in the proper position to effectively counter. This brings me back to zigzagging my pawns, which accomplishes this exact strategy. It's important to note that comfortability with being forced into reactivity is a huge part of the process. In The Witcher 3, King Radovid has a line where he states,
"You see, Witcher, chess is the art of sacrificing your own pieces."
Which is a phenomenal way to frame the needed mentality for the game. This opportunistic logic can be utilized in more traditional Japanese turn-based combat systems too. In my playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, I acquired a persona named Principality, an angel that deflects all physical damage. It was also equipped with nothing but healing spells. This meant that the enemy could hurt me with magic, just like any other persona I'd use, but if they went to hit me with a normal attack, it was impossible to hurt me. Indeed, they took damage instead. In turn-based combat systems, most games don't allow you to not sustain damage. They're just not designed that way. Being able to avoid the primary form of damage in the game is about as close as you'll get. This concept even works in battles where you're one individual fighting multiple enemies. During combat in The Witcher 3, I often treat Geralt like a samurai during the encounters. I do not strike unless no attack is coming towards me. I simply dodge or block. Say I'm fighting a swarm of drowners. I will dodge in a circle until they've all grouped in close to each other, and then I'll attack, burning and shredding all of them up simultaneously. Once a monster slips past the reach of my sword, I back out of the mob and repeat my tactic. This more opportunistic strategy is the next logical step of cover and move, but without the backup. The entire idea is to not sustain damage. While basic as a concept, this infuriatingly shows an inkling of philosophical truth in the empty advice, just don't get hit. Floyd Mayweather shows this exact point too. The famous boxer is widely considered to be one of the greatest of all time, simply because he almost never took a punch. Once again, we're shown if you cannot be beaten, you will not lose. To know your enemy, you must first become your enemy. This is Musashi's concept of to become the enemy. The idea being to look at an enemy's situation from their perspective. I find this to be an interesting subversion. Typically, empathy is a tool to connect with others, whereas in this case, It's a means to display dominance. Every battle royale is a last man standing affair. One of the iconic features of the popular game mode is the storm. The farther into a match you are, the more damage the storm will do, offering a clear solution. Get to the safe zone, or die. This design decision is brilliant. It acts as an unstoppable force, pushing the dwindling number of survivors into combat. Why not use the storm to your advantage? Earlier, I mentioned the paramount importance of proper positioning. There's a further consideration needed for this with Battle Royale when moving between safe zones. Players have to decide on a position to hold, assess how to get there effectively, and then figure out where to go next to keep an advantage. A common strategy is to keep a power position as the storm is closing in, and try cutting off stragglers as they move toward the safe zone themselves. This strategy accomplishes a number of tactical advantages, and acts as a clear example of using empathy as a strategic tool for dominance. By setting up a fight in this manner, you allow yourself the unrivaled advantage of better positioning, not only because you ideally have height or cover, but because now your enemy is taking damage regardless of whether you shoot them. From the enemy's perspective, they have to move. Even if your shots don't kill them, they may cause damage, which could prevent them from having enough time to heal, thus solidifying their death. This is a similar strategy to XCOM 2's aforementioned Overwatch mechanic, only with the empathetic understanding that the enemy moving into the line of fire is not a what if, but absolute certainty. Or they die trying. When I play chess with my old man, he has this obsession with using his queen. I quite literally don't go after his king, the primary goal of chess. I wait until after I take his favorite piece, then I go for the king. I never have a problem with losing my queen in a match, but that never happens unless I'm taking his. I will trade queens almost every time willingly, however. Once I take the queen out of his toolset, I've essentially guaranteed myself a victory. This is in line with B.H. Lidell Hart, the English military strategist. To ensure attaining an objective, one should have alternate objectives. An attack that converges on one point should threaten and be able to diverge against another. Only by this flexibility of aim can strategy be attuned to the uncertainty of war. A final example could be found in the Shovel Knight King of Cards campaign. This DLC came with a card game built into the design of the entire story. You can collect for and play a game known as Joustus. Without getting into the nuance of all the rules, the point of the game is to have your cards cover the majority of the gems in the center of a provided board. You can, however, push cards off of that space with certain rules applying to how and why. The entire goal of the game becomes positioning. You need to ensure that if the enemy pushes you off a space, it will only put you into a more advantageous spot, like onto a gem itself, the primary goal. In a sense, it offers parallels to tic-tac-toe. In a more puzzle-centric approach to XCOM's logic, you have to keep locking your opponent in a situation where they have to help you if they want to help themselves. Understanding what would help them allows you to deflect that goal in some way, making it counterproductive. Empathizing allows you to turn the tide in battle. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Miyamoto Musashi has another insightful quote: "If you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything." What he's saying is that if you've become a master at something, you understand what it takes to master anything, whether that's the blood, sweat, and tears involved, or incorporating lessons from your past and applying what you've learned. Be inspired, whether that's video games or some tangible life experience in the real world. Some of you will be like me in that you've easily played video games for over 10,000 hours. Take logic from one game and apply it to others. This is a mentality that has always helped me improve. Utilizing rules of military engagement, mathematics, and even video game logic have benefited me in chess. Putting your opponent in check does not act as an attempt at winning. Think about it this way. A check is equivalent to a stun lock in a JRPG. Now you can attack again. It's a simple reframing of the mechanic, but it effectively communicates how to conceptualize the move and therefore engage with it at a deeper level. When I finally played Resident Evil 4 via the remake, I figured I would be utilizing stealth more in my playthrough. At the beginning of the game, I immediately noticed that the remake added a stealth system and subsequent knife kill animations that almost seemed like asset flips from The Last of Us. What I found, to my surprise and excitement, is that I actually played Resident Evil 4 more like Doom 2016. How is that, with one being an action horror title and the other being one of the most aggressive first-person shooters of all time? Doom 2016 famously included a mechanic known as the Glory Kill. This is a melee attack you could use after staggering an enemy to instantly kill them. What's more, these kills specifically would always offer a payout of health or ammo. This is a widely praised feature due to how it interplayed with the combat, incentivizing constant aggression and pushing players towards enemies at all times. It kept up the excitement, offered players a layer of risk-reward, and felt endlessly satisfying to pull off. How this applies to Resident Evil 4, of course, is with Leon Kennedy's iconic roundhouse kick. Much like with Doom, after staggering an enemy, Leon can turn his adventure into a roadhouse simulator.
Keep the change. Roadhouse.
Often these kicks will kill the enemy or knock down others surrounding it. If they don't die, that reprieve from the slightest tension, even for a moment, is welcome all the same. Resident Evil 4 is meant to be played fast and loud, in a way that would make the Doomslayer proud. While I'm not the greatest builder in Fortnite, I'll still make you work for the kill in a build battle. What if I told you that From Software games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring helped me get better at build fights in Epic's Battle Royale? Dark Souls forces you to watch enemy patterns akin to a boxing match. You wait for the enemy to leave an opening and you hit them with a combo, then back away. If they're attacking you, keep your shield up or move as needed. When an enemy is low on health, they might back off to heal, and this is when you get mindfully aggressive with your opponent. Build battles in Fortnite, structurally speaking, work exactly the same way. If you're being shot at, simply hold your wall up like a shield or move to a more advantageous position like a dodge roll. Once an enemy has shot their bullets and stopped, they're probably reloading. That is your moment to shoot back or get some kind of proper positioning. Similar to a fight in Dark Souls, this is the enemy leaving an opening. Use the guns and items at your disposal to keep a better position, and hammer away at them when they aren't ready to fight back. Obviously, this isn't addressing the insurmountable skill ceiling of build battles, but the principle is certainly there. Coupled with the common tactics in other shooters, like utilizing stealth, this mentality will help astronomically in any build battle you're in. Now we've come full circle, back to some of Sun Tzu's wisdom. The opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. Allow me to re-emphasize Miyamoto Musashi's assessment of mastery. If you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. The time you spend investing in mastering one thing will lead you to a further understanding of other pursuits. It is of course paramount to apply these understandings in your everyday life too. You'll achieve alternate perspectives through sheer experience, and that will spark a butterfly effect of improvement in every regard. This is as true for war as it is for anything else in life. Use your inspirations everywhere to improve in sports, your relationships, or while enjoying your favorite hobbies, including video games. So that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, you saw the whole thing, so I appreciate it. You may have noticed that throughout the video, I was streaming. I do stream 3 days a week over on Twitch, YouTube, X, or Twitter. And then if you guys want to follow me on X or Twitter to keep up with things like that, various updates for new videos, streams, any updates of whether or not I will be streaming, can't stream, impromptu streams, things of that nature, thoughts on video games, streamlines on anything else that I might just have thoughts about. So feel free to check me out over there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Adios.